Okay, the doodads tell me that we are live. Welcome. Welcome to the live stream. I am Brigantia Blackbird of the Blackbird Grimoire. Welcome to my very spur of the moment. Take me as I am. I have thoughts to kind of brain dump on you. A couple days ago, a video popped up on my YouTube feed. It's from the channel Natural Witchery. And she was asking the question in her title, what is a more magical lifestyle anyway? Because this is something that had been on her mind of recent days. And sounds like not just recent days, but it's been with her from a while. At least that's the impression I got from her discussing the issue. And she said that that was the beginning of a process that led to her going deep within. She really started peeling back the layers of her soul because once she started thinking, well, I want more magic in my life. I want more magical life. And then she said, well, what is magic anyway? And then as she's having these deep thoughts, she finds herself in the midst of a health scare. Now, fortunately, that turned out all right, and she's fine. And I'm sure everyone watching will want to join me in wishing her continued good health because that's scary, but it could have been quite serious for her. And while she was essentially waiting for test results and not knowing which way things were really going to go, that had her going even deeper within and asking, okay, what do I really want my life to mean? What have I done so far? What has all of this been for? What a frightening time that is. I mean, it's hard enough to do that even when you don't have the overarching threat of something could be seriously wrong with my body and I might need to be making significant lifestyle adjustments or I might need to be preparing for the end, for shedding the mortal coil. Extraordinarily scary things. Now, as I said, fortunately, it turns out that she's fine. But the questions that all of this stirred up within her about what was she really after when she talked about wanting more magic in her life or wanting to have a more magical lifestyle, those questions did not go away from her. And she said in her video, which is just 8 minutes long, which after this stream, I do encourage you to go over there, give her some love, watch her video, see what she has to say for herself. But she didn't expect this to really be one of the videos of hers that does well uh, algorithmically. Ugh, geez, I can talk. I promise. I've had my caffeine, gang. But I thought I can't think of a more significant conversation for us to really have within the witchcraft community because our motivations and what's feeding us and what is it that we're actually after? What is our end goal? What are we all doing all of this work for? I can't imagine anything of greater significance to us. And it's just the kind of discourse that's being held on a more meaningful level that I have been craving, that from time to time I try to provide, try to whet the appetite for because I feel like all of this is part of preparing us all for the next step in our journey as individual practitioners and honestly as the greater witchcraft community. We need to figure out what it is that we're up to. What does it really mean to be living this magical lifestyle? What does it mean to be a witch? What does it mean to have magic at the center of one's soul? So as far as I'm concerned, this matters. Now, this lady has a very large channel. I do not flatter myself that she will take the time or have the time to check out what I have to say on, little old me channel. On the off chance that I'm wrong, hello, welcome, Natural Witchery. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it, and I consider it a compliment. But since in all probability it's just going to be us who's usually here on the channel, why don't we think about this? We talk about ways to implement various magical practices into our lifestyle every single day on the daily forecast. The practices, suggestions, different things you can study, things you can try, crystals you can carry. All of that is about incorporating little bits and pieces of magic into your day-to-day life. However, sometimes we'll be going along and just kind of be busily integrating various practices and various forms of study into our daily lives more and more, but it's not really scratching that itch we have within our souls. It's not satisfying the appetite that we have. And so it's worth asking ourselves why. And this brings me to another point that Natural Witchery brought up about using spiritual practices as a way to spiritually bypass the actual issue a person should be struggling with. She said she had caught herself doing that. I know I've been guilty of that. Um, Honestly, if we were all being honest with ourselves right now, when you said, by show of hands, who has used their spirituality to distract them from other issues going on in their lives, or distracted themselves with different aspects of their spirituality to evade dealing with the actual spiritual issue, we should probably all be creeping our hands up and just kind of admitting that, yes, we have done that. And of course, why do we do that? It's because it's less scary. We can still say, but look at all the work I'm doing. Look at all the hard effort. Look at all the hours I have spent meditating and everything else. Why am I not getting more out of my spirituality? Well, it's because you haven't done the necessary work that your soul is really crying out for. Now, before I continue rambling on, hello, Mistel Chambliss. Hey there, just wanted to say hi. I hate just lurking. I am very glad you decided to do more than lurk. I like much more interactive conversations when I can, and I'm hoping that this one will be fairly interactive because I think this topic has pretty personal relevance for all of us. So, evading evasion, that's a pretty big thing. And I got to thinking about so many examples that I've seen, not only for myself, but for other people within our community who have been practicing evasion over pretty significant issues. When I think of evasion, I think of this very sweet, very young witch, heart of gold, but who was forever doing large magical projects on behalf of other people and not attending to the business in her own life. And she had a great many things that really did need tending to. And no matter how gently it was suggested that perhaps she needed to focus a little bit less on what she thought everyone else needed and spend a little bit more time kind of sorting out her own life, she just could not help herself. It was a far less painful prospect to invest copious amounts of her magical energy and effort into projects for other people than it was to address the issues within her own heart. That's a scary thing. I got into a rather interesting discussion on another platform the other day. Uh, should have had the wisdom not to touch the whole thing with the 10-foot pole. However, I had a moment of foolishness and and got the usual reward for my foolishness. But in the conversation, it doesn't matter what it was, a person was trying to insist that they had not just contradictory ideas, but mutually exclusive ideas in their spirituality. And they said it was fine because the human soul was full of contradictions. And I was like, no, you're talking about two things that either one is correct or the other is correct because they can't coexist. They are mutually exclusive. And by trying to pretend that they are completely compatible, and it's just a matter of opinion if they're not, well, that's actually stymieing your spirituality. It is making sure that it stays stagnant. You're not going to be able to grow. And that's why you have not been growing. It's because you have these incompatible ideas. And as it usually happens, that's when I was called a bitch. And, while we're on the subject, I don't know why the younger generation thinks calling someone of my generation a bitch is going to have any kind of psychological impact on them. You see, when I was growing up, there was an artist called oh, I think her name was Meredith Brooks, something along that lines. But she had a song that was called "Bitch," and it was the anthem, the absolute anthem of my generation. Because the chorus was, I'm a bitch, I'm a lover, I'm a child, I'm a mother, I'm a sinner, I'm a saint, all these things. What it was talking about was the duality of female nature and the full spectrum of the human soul. It was about the what it what our humanity means to us as women. We have the gorgeous rose petals that are our finer qualities, and then we have all of the thorns that protect those rose petals. And the whole point of it was accepting that you have these things within yourself, and realizing that when you enter into a relationship with a man, that he's going to have to be able to be psychologically tough enough to deal with that, because otherwise you'll steamroller him, or you'll break him, or a thousand other things. It became a badge of honor. So again, I don't know why the younger generation ever bothers calling someone my age a bitch, because we'll either take it as a compliment or just think, oh, they resorted to name calling. That means they lose the argument by default. But here's the thing. If anytime someone says there's a flaw in your reasoning, and you can just resort to saying, "Oh, well, I'll call you a name." And you think that ends the argument and you've got checkmate on them because you have declared that they are mean. Well, then that serves as a very handy dandy tool to permanently evade actually dealing with the issue, which is someone said there was a flaw in your reasoning. Someone said you are holding incompatible ideas in your head and it is hurting you. It is hurting you spiritually. It is hurting you psychologically. It is going to affect your magical practice. Make no mistake. It's going to affect every aspect of your life because you are trying to make things that cannot coexist actually coexist. And you are doing everything in your power to fake reality. And that's going to have a very bad impact, especially if you weave a tapestry of illusion. Eventually that unravels. And that's what happens when people have this practice and habit of endless evasion. It's and that's why they get so sensitive when they are challenged on any one particular point, and why they won't actually say, no, 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 I thought about it and I think that that these things can be reconciled. They don't make that case. Instead, they keep telling you that any argument you make is insufficient, because if you did make a sufficient argument, and you can, and if they did acknowledge that, then they would have to face that evasion they had been doing on themselves. They would have to ask themselves why. They would have to ask what motivated it. They would have to address the question of what do they actually believe? And not only is that uncomfortable, that is extraordinarily scary, because once you find one way in which you've been lying to yourself, you might find layer upon layer upon layer of other things you've told yourself that just aren't so. That helps support your idea that you have been deconstructing, that maybe really had a lot to do with how you constructed your entire worldview. And people don't want to do that, especially, and I think this is what makes it particularly hard for pagans and witches. So we've already gone through that process. We've already gone through the process, most of us. If we weren't raised in a pagan household, and many of us were not, then we've already gone through that process of questioning our beliefs, questioning things we've been taught, right down to the seeds of those ideas, and saying it doesn't add up. And for some people, after having gone through that once, they're not coming through the experience and thinking, wow, I did that. And if I had to, I know I have the strength to do it again. I know I can come through this and that it won't kill me. It might be painful, but it will not kill me. Instead of coming away from that in the kind of victorious mindset, they have it and they come away from that experience fearful of, I never want to go through that again. That was painful. That was scary. I wasn't sure I was ever going to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. I never want to deal with that ever again. And so they will become hostile to anyone who dares suggest that perhaps that process of examining ideas and deciding what holds water and what doesn't, that it is ongoing. That is not what ends. And that's always going to be part of a witch's life. I think that's also why we have these online communities in which people are just, I'll be honest, they look like they're walking on eggshells with one another. Because if anyone responds to any announcement, whether someone said, I just did a hex, or they say something, they say that they're trying to combine ideas in their spirituality that really don't belong together. If they are given a response that is anything other than approval and praise, and usually kind of excessive praise at that, if they have anything other than that, they think that person is just mean, and so that person needs to be ostracized from the community. And so we have all of these places where people are essentially making sure that their magic and that their well of spirituality is stagnating permanently, because they won't break through that, because they've decided that it is socially unacceptable to disagree. Now, I don't think that I have to belabor the point too much as to why that is ultimately not a good thing. We have to be a little bit more fearless than that. And especially for those of us in the craft, so many people, their introduction to paganism, it became through because they became aware that witchcraft was actually a thing, and it has substance, and it is real, and they just became absolutely enchanted by the idea. And they don't necessarily stop to think about whether or not there's any other path possible, whether or not that's for them, that it's perfectly possible to admire these things, and to study things like astrology, to study um, the symbolism of various magical correspondences, to read the myths, to seek out the gods. It's possible to do all of those things without ever practicing magic once. It can absolutely be done, and for many people, that's exactly what should be done, because their path and whatever specialities or expertise they may develop, it lies along a different path. But unfortunately, we have so many people who come to the craft and they know within their souls somewhere, even if they won't admit it consciously, that it really isn't for them. But because they would feel foolish if they said they were walking away from it, or thought that maybe something went along, if they had a different path calling to them, they're not willing to face that. They're not willing to face just basic social embarrassment. And also, I think that is something that has been actively reinforced by internet culture. Because when do you see the most explosive things occur on social media and just the internet in general? It's when someone changes their mind. It doesn't matter if they have an excellent argument for why they did, or they said, oh, well, evidence came to light about X, Y, or Z. And because of that, I realized that my old point of view just wasn't really supportable. And so I adjusted myself to be in alignment with the facts. And I'm just kind of moving forward with that. People get vicious. They'll say, oh, you folded, or you're wrong, or you're this, or you're that. And a lot of people just don't want to face that. It makes them crumble up in their souls to even face that various possibility. And then I think that's even worse if people have gone out of their way to have a more cultivated and more polished image on their social media, particularly for content creators. There are some people who do some really beautiful work, far more technically proficient than I will ever be. And I think that they would be the most vulnerable to this difficulty in having to change course from time to time, saying, you know, I reevaluated, or this thing I was really solid on, I'm just not sure, and I'm sharing these doubts so that, you know, you might feel more comfortable if you have doubts about that or something else. And sometimes instead of that making it okay for people, they use it as a premise to attack them. That's one of the reasons why on this channel I decided we were taking a warts and all approach. You know, that it's what I do is very simplistic. Pretty sure a 10-year-old has greater technical skills than I do. It's very straightforward. You know, it's my hair is however it happens to be. I don't really do a lot of takes. You know, however I'm expressing something, even if it's badly, well, you know, it's how I expressed it. And if I ever happen to do something well, then at least you know that's genuine too. But it's why I don't delete videos. It's because it allows people, if they were bored and wanted to investigate, they allow to see that process of evolution, where I've changed, where I haven't, where things have become a bit more squishy, where things have firmed up, and just the general process that took me from point A to point B. And until people are willing to let these, you know, flaws be visible, I think there's no way to get out of that trap of evasion, no way for them to really free themselves. And I think this is also why we have so much lurking culture on the internet. It's because it's much easier to never have spoken up at all. And that way, no one has anything solid to use against you. I mean, it's worth asking, what kind of society do we even have that people have these maladaptive behaviors just to get through daily life? It isn't healthy. It isn't healthy. And of course, again, this kind of mindset, it really stymies the spirituality. It is going to upset your ability to really detect and interact with that magical flow, and it's not going to lead to a life where you have really created meaning for yourself. And that's something that Natural Witchery was really underscoring. It's because when she was facing so much uncertainty about her health, she had to reevaluate her priorities. What really mattered to her, and what was really going to be an impact. And she said, this isn't in some grand, grandiose way. And I really appreciate her underlying that, because yeah, it seems like from my generation onward, we were constantly pressured by everybody, our teachers, our parents, anyone who were older than us and thought that they needed to give us advice. It was always dream big, dream big, dream big. And, okay, I'm not against dreaming big. I mean, for God's sake, I'm a Leo. I'm a Leo. Leos do a lot of dreaming, and that dreaming is almost never on the small scale. But I think what it did is that it instilled this mindset into, the younger Gen X's, millennials, Gen Z, and all going forward, that, if they have what people might call smaller ambitions or more anonymous ambitions, that somehow those were not good enough. And I think that's really cruel. I think it has been the most hideous cruelty, because not everyone is going to have this career that ends up with them making zillions of dollars. Not everyone is going to have a life that is of, great prominence and public renown and people patting them on the back and telling them how tremendous they are. That isn't real life. I mean, that isn't real life for even one person out of a million. I mean, that's an exceptionally rare thing. And if that's someone, then I mean, pursue your destiny by all means. You should not let anyone stop you. But the idea that that people who just that isn't their nature, that's not who they are, those aren't their ambitions, treating them as if they are lesser, treating them essentially as peasants, I think it's absolutely grotesque. And I'm very glad to see uh, Natural Witchery join her voice to saying that these things that are showy and flashy and that have external validation, that's not what it really takes to create meaning or to create something that lasted. And I mean, that touched me because ultimately that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, just trying to say, let's, when people talk about, make your craft your own, be very individualistic, fine. And then no one provides any ideas about how a person might try that out. That's why I come up with ideas every single day for you guys in hopes that whether an idea resonates with you or it takes you into a different direction that is more resonant for you, that either way, that it is proving helpful and that it gets someone into thinking about how they are in charge of their spiritual lives and their spiritual development, and that they have all the tools that are required to really put themselves in that driver's seat and to decide what is going to be worthwhile them pursuing and what not. And that's really, I think, the essence of the magical lifestyle. And I think also it's worth pointing out that having that sense of magical connection that isn't necessarily this constant flow of activity, isn't this constant, projective, I'm putting forth all the effort, I'm making things happen. It isn't always like that. Sometimes it is simply taking a deep breath, quieting your mind, and not even necessarily going into a meditative state, but just taking a moment and listening. We have so many distractions. We're constantly surrounded by screens and light and sound and so many different forms of stimuli that sometimes we just need to take a moment where we're not actively interacting with those things and just listening. Listening to the acoustics of the room, listening to the acoustics of the local public park that you took a walk to, finding a quiet spot in the woods if you're lucky, and just taking a moment and listening to that energy flow. And not, I mean, I think you all know, I don't mean just listening with, your physical ears. I mean, listening with the entirety of your being, all of your senses, everything nature gave you to really to work with, of just taking that moment and listening. And when you do that, it makes it so much easier to prioritize what matters and what doesn't. What pursuits are more about vanity than they are about anything that's personally productive for you. Just taking that moment to listen and just be still and to not be bossed around by all the things demanding your attention or saying, get up and do this because it benefits them, not necessarily because it benefits you. Just taking a little bit of time and feeling things, of being able to take down your defenses. I mean, particularly those of you with pronounced empathic abilities. I mean, I know you've got to do a lot of shielding. And you probably also have to do a great deal of chakra cleansing to make sure that other people's gunk doesn't get stuck in your own system and create problems for you. So, taking these moments where you're off to yourself and you're able to take down those defenses and you're able to just passively take in energies, let that go through your system, recharge, and not having to have your shields up, not having to be ready to defend yourself in some way. That's incredibly necessary for the spirit. I probably don't talk enough about the receptive energy side of things. No, we talk a lot about the feminine side of things for sure. I'm a woman, of course, and a lot of my viewers are women, and so that's relevant to us. But I want to just talk about a receptive in the sense of taking things in, of allowing things to absorb. That's where I think a lot of meaning is to be found, because sometimes what you are taking in just quietly, it matters a great deal more than all the things that we're pushing ourselves to do, and we need that counterbalance. For one, because we are overstimulated, and for two, you have to have those moments so you can actually look at the results of something, the consequences of something. When we keep going 90 miles an hour all the time, not only are we going to be in this largely fruitless quest to try to completely magicalize our lives, it's not going to quite get the job done because we're putting out the projective energy, but we haven't taken back in with the receptive energy, and taking that minute to receive, I think, is incredibly vital. And it's in those moments where I think a person really does discover their purpose, what it is they're meant to be doing, what it is they want to be doing. You ever find that by the time a person deprograms themselves from all the things that other people wanted from them or social pressures that they felt particularly vulnerable to, by the time they get rid of all of that, they sometimes there's this moment of thinking, "I don't know what it is I actually want." And I think that's another thing that can motivate the busyness and the evasion and getting hostile towards anyone who says, "Perhaps this isn't the best thing. Perhaps you could be on a different track that would be better for you." I think that's what's feeds into that resistance, because that's also scary to come face to face with the reality of perhaps you don't know yourself as well as you thought you did. And maybe you've been actively avoiding that self, and you're afraid of what the reckoning might incorporate into. That is scary, and I don't have an easy answer for you, because it isn't going to be easy if you need to reintegrate with yourself that badly. But I mean, what else is there to do? I mean, what else is really demanding our time? If we don't know who we are, what we want, why we want it, and what direction we really do want to be going in our lives, what we want to make of it, you do have ambitions of being, the next prominent CEO who has startled the world with some kind of invention, whether that's you or you want to retire to your cottage, you want to grow your roses, you want to perfect a really great blend of tea, and maybe write that book, to be published posthumously, because you don't really want to deal with uh, the reactions or anything else that goes along with the book selling business. You're content to let that happen stand after you've shed the mortal coil. Whatever your ambition is, you're not going to be able to do any of those things until you are able to start with where you're actually at. And that's something that Natural Witchery really emphasized towards the end of her video, of being able to be comfortable with where we're actually at and being honest with that, and just self-honesty. That's been very large in my mind lately. I think that in a lot of areas in society and within individuals, we're all just kind of starting to rip off the band-aids, the layers and layers of band-aids that we put over ourselves, to distract ourselves from what's actually going on, and just seeing what lurks beneath the surface of those band-aids. And I think the process of facing that finally is not going to be as bad as we think, in the sense that once we do deal with it, that we will be able to move forward much more productively. That's not to say it'll be completely painless, but it's so much better to come to a state of honesty, of just acknowledging reality and dealing with things as they are. That is so much easier than trying to weave that tapestry of illusions, of put up a front, wear the mask forever and ever and ever, and get through your life and get to maybe even your 60s or your 70s and say, what was any of it for? And that's why I wanted to respond to Witchery's video, because I think she's bringing up important things. I just want to reinforce some of the themes that she underlined herself, and also want to represent, the possible consequences if we choose not to take on this challenge for ourselves individually, of really finding out what's what. That magical life, It begins with our own magical alignment, and that magical alignment begins with honesty. So that's my take on it. Thank you for anyone who has been here with me. Thank you again to Mistel, who was kind enough to say hello. Very much appreciated. And to those of you watching afterwards, be sure to let me know what you think about all this, especially if you did go ahead and check out her video, which I do recommend you do. Just what was your take on it? What are your thoughts? What are you thinking when it comes to magical lifestyle when we're kind of peeling back, the various ideas of activities we can do? If we're really getting down to the heart of it, if we're getting down to what's really lurking into the seed of our motivations, our true desires, about getting rid of the illusions we used to fool ourselves with, about actually deciding what is meaningful. Wherever your thoughts are, wherever your heart is on that, I would love to hear about that in the comments because I want to spark discussion. I would like to see conversation in the witchcraft community improve as to quality. I would like it to be more than what it is today. And I think that begins with responding to people who are out there who are making their own content and giving my take and not quite having a conversation with them at least not yet, but putting it out there into the ether that other people are also contemplating these things and encouraging other people to share their own viewpoint on that. I think that's a real way of moving forward, because these kinds of thoughts, I think these are reflections on the qualities of our studies when we are able to expound upon ideas and the implications of our practices and our philosophy and get down to the level of the heart. So, with that, I think I will go ahead and leave you to the rest of your afternoon. Again, please let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please be so kind as to leave a like. That lets YouTube know that there are things that are generally worthwhile happening on this channel, and that encourages YouTube to put this channel and videos like these into the pathway of other people who might also be contemplating these larger questions about, yes, I can learn all about the Wheel of the Year. I can learn about magical correspondences. I know how to perform rituals. I have my philosophy about who and what the gods are and what our relationships with them can be. I can do all of these things, but I'm needing to get it sunk into a deeper level. Other people like that, I know they're out there. And um, believe it or not, by leaving likes on videos and by leaving comments on them, that helps them connect with other people who are also wanting to go deeper. So, thank you for any assistance. Thank you for being here. I will see you guys, well, the next time I see you. Have a good afternoon. Bye for now.